Sparkles practiced till dawn. Jungkook fainted in Jimin's arms. The promise of love was whispered in silence crescent loudly. Don't fall now, Jungkook. The sound of Jimin's voice shattered the tense silence, echoing against the cold, sweat-stained walls of the practice room. A dull thud followed as Jungkook's body collapsed, his knees giving way beneath him, limbs trembling from exhaustion. The clock on the mirrored wall blinked 3:14. The music had long stopped playing, yet their bodies were still echoing the rhythm of perfection, pushing against human limits. Jimin lunged forward just in time to catch him, arms wrapping instinctively around the trembling figure before him. Jungkook's head fell against his shoulder, skin clammy, breath shallow, his heartbeat erratic beneath his soaked shirt. The world around them slowed. Outside, rain whispered against the studio windows. Inside, silence became unbearable, except for the soft gasps of a boy who had pushed himself too far. You idiot, Jimin whispered, voice cracking as he cradled Jungkook tighter. Why didn't you stop? Jungkook's lashes fluttered, his voice a breath of fog against Jimin's throat. I had to. I promised you. The weight of those words fell heavier than his limp body. Jimin's grip tightened. The studio had become their church, their battleground, and their prison. Since the announcement of the world tour, the pressure had tripled. Jungkook, ever the perfectionist, had transformed his pain into rhythm, his desperation into movement. He danced as if chased by demons, but tonight they finally caught up. Jimin lifted Jungkook in his arms and carried him to the old couch tucked in the corner. The warmth of skin against skin sent a tremor through him, not from desire, but fear. Fear that something irreversible had happened. He grabbed a towel and dabbed at Jungkook's forehead, his hands shaking. You don't need to prove anything. Not to them, not to me. You're enough. But Jungkook's eyes, when they opened again, were haunted. There's something you don't know. The words, barely audible, came like a cold breeze. Jimin froze. Jungkook reached into his bag, fingers trembling, and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, creased and damp with sweat. He pressed it into Jimin's hand. If anything happens to me, you have to read this. Alone. Jimin's heart pounded. What are you talking about? He whispered, clutching the paper like a lifeline. What did you do? But Jungkook's eyes fluttered shut again. Later at dawn, the silence deepened. The studio bathed in a pale blue glow as the first light of day crept through the windows. Jimin sat beside the sleeping boy, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. His thoughts raced, memories, regrets, unanswered questions. He looked at the letter again, but didn't open it. Instead, he whispered into the quiet, the way Jungkook had once whispered to him when they were still too young to understand the weight of longing. I'll wait, Kook, even if you never tell me what's chasing you. I'll be here. Outside, the rain had stopped. But inside, a storm had just begun. You read it, didn't you? Jimin's fingers twitched, the crumpled letter still hidden in the pocket of his hoodie like a ticking time bomb. He had sworn to himself he wouldn't open it, not yet. But the way Jungkook looked at him now, eyes sharp and unreadable despite the bruised fatigue lining his face, made his chest tighten. I didn't, Jimin lied. Jungkook stared at him, lips parted as if ready to challenge him, but he didn't. Instead, he turned his face away, jaw clenched. Silence crackled between them, electric and dangerous. They were alone in the dorm kitchen, hours after practice, long after the others had gone to sleep. The refrigerator hummed like background static. Outside, neon lights from the city cast ghostly shadows across the counter. You think I'm weak, Jungkook muttered suddenly. Jimin blinked. What? You always see me as the one you have to protect, the kid who tries too hard, the one who breaks. That's not true, Jimin's voice rose. Don't put words in my mouth. Jungkook stood up, chair scraping sharply against the tile. Then, why are you always watching me like I'm about to fall apart, like I'm some glass doll you need to wrap in cotton? Because you did fall apart, Jimin snapped, taking a step forward. You fainted in my fucking arms, Jungkook. What was I supposed to do, clap for you? The younger man stared at him, chest heaving. Something darker passed through his gaze, hurt, anger, maybe betrayal. You don't get it. His voice was low. I needed to keep going. That was the only way I could silence it. Silence what? Jungkook didn't answer. The silence between them was alive now, fed by secrets, by the letter Jimin hadn't read but couldn't stop thinking about. And just as Jimin opened his mouth to speak again, Jungkook closed the space between them. I saw you, he whispered, eyes burning. With him. Jimin froze. What? At the after-party last month, you think I didn't notice? Jungkook's breath hitched. You were drunk. He had his hand on your back. You leaned into him. Jimin's heart sank. It was nothing. You know it was nothing. Do I? Jungkook laughed bitterly. Because it didn't look like nothing. It was just yoongijungkook. I was tired, tipsy. He was helping me. No, Jungkook growled, stepping even closer. You wanted me to see. You wanted me to feel it. You were punishing me. Jimin's lips parted, stunned. Why the hell would I want to punish you? Because I didn't say it, Jungkook whispered, barely audible. Because I waited too long. Jimin swallowed hard. And now you think it's too late? He asked, voice cracking. Jungkook didn't answer. Instead, he leaned forward, so close their foreheads nearly touched. Say it, Jimin dared him, breath warm against Jungkook's lips. If you mean it, say it now. Jungkook's eyes burned into his. You don't want to hear it from me. Not now. Not when everything's falling apart. I'd rather hear it broken than never at all. A long beat of silence passed. Then Jungkook stepped back, as if the moment had burned too close to the truth. Tomorrow, he whispered, already turning away. After practice, I'll tell you everything. You said that before, Jimin replied bitterly. Jungkook didn't turn around. This time, I won't run. The door closed softly behind him, leaving Jimin alone with the hum of the fridge, the thud of his own heartbeat, and the paper in his hoodie pocket that suddenly felt heavier than ever. The next day, the rehearsal room was hotter than usual, figuratively and literally. Tension hung in the air like thick smoke. The choreography was sharp, the music loud, but nothing drowned out the storm brewing between them. Taehyung noticed it first. Did you two fight? He whispered during break, eyeing them both from where he sat on the floor, guzzling water. No, Jimin said. Yes, Jungkook said at the same time. Taehyung raised an eyebrow but didn't press. He was used to their synchronized chaos. But the others weren't blind. Hoseok caught Jimin's wrist at one point and said quietly, Don't push him too far. He's burning at both ends. Jimin looked across the room at Jungkook, drenched in sweat, eyes hollow with focus. I'm not the one holding the lighter. That evening, the truth came bleeding out. Not in the way Jimin expected, not in a whispered confession or an intimate touch, but in the form of a confrontation. A phone call, a name. Jeon. A name Jimin hadn't heard in almost 3 years. She called me, Jungkook said, eyes locked on Jimin's. She's in Seoul, she said. She's ready to talk about what happened. Jimin's breath caught. That night, he asked. Jungkook nodded. Everything, the reason I stopped talking to her, the reason I spiraled. And suddenly it all clicked. The rehearsals, the self-punishment, the night terrors Jimin had heard through the dorm walls, the way Jungkook had clung to perfection like it was the only thing keeping him alive. She knows what happened, Jungkook said, and she's ready to tell me. Do you want me to go with you? Jimin asked gently. But Jungkook shook his head. No, I have to do this alone. He didn't come back that night. Jimin sat on the rooftop of the dorm, wind tugging at his hoodie strings, phone untouched beside him. The city below glittered like a million silent watchers. The stars above said nothing. When his phone finally buzzed at 2:03 a.m., his hands were numb. A message. From Jungkook. You were right, she knew everything. And now so do I need to disappear for a while. Then nothing. No calls, no location, no goodbye. Only the echo of silence, and a letter still unopened, burning in Jimin's hoodie like a loaded gun. The letter sat on Jimin's desk like a live wire, unopened, unread, unforgiven. 3 days had passed since Jungkook vanished. No message, no call, no rehearsal. Silence. It was the kind of silence that made your chest tighten every time your phone buzzed, only to find it wasn't him. The kind that made every breath feel like a betrayal, every heartbeat like a countdown. The others asked questions. Taehyung tried to act normal. Namjoon covered for him with management, his voice carefully diplomatic. But the group chat remained quiet. Jungkook's icon stayed dim, untouched. On the 4th night, Jimin cracked. He slammed his fist against the wall of the dorm room, breath ragged, chest heaving. The others weren't home. No one to hear the scream he muffled with the back of his hand. "You coward," he hissed to the empty room. With shaking fingers, he unfolded the letter. The paper was stiff, torn at the edges. Jungkook's handwriting was messy, rushed, like it had spilled out of him in a storm. "Jimin, if you're reading this, I guess I wasn't strong enough to say it face to face. That's on me. I know you hate half-truths, but this is all of it. The night I stopped being okay wasn't the night I fainted. It was 3 years ago. You remember that rooftop party? The one where I disappeared for a few hours and came back drunker than anyone had ever seen me. That wasn't alcohol, it was fear. Yura found me in the hallway. She told me something that night that shattered everything I thought I knew about us. About you. She said you were in love with me." Jimin froze. His breath caught. His pulse roared in his ears. His eyes reread the sentence again and again, as if expecting it to change. "She said you were in love with me and that you were too afraid to say it. That you'd confessed to her in tears once while drunk and begged her not to tell me. That you said if I ever found out, we'd never be the same. She said I was hurting you just by existing. I didn't believe her, not at first, but then I started watching you. Closer, I noticed things. The way you looked away when I changed shirts. The way you held your breath when I laughed too close. The way you avoided being alone with me for too long. I thought, maybe she was right. And then I hated myself. Because I realized something else. She wasn't lying, not completely. Because I had been falling too. But by the time I figured it out, we'd already built this wall between us. I thought I was protecting you by staying silent. I thought I was being noble, but really, I was just a coward. You were always braver than me, braver in pain, braver in love. So I pushed myself harder, to deserve you, to be better, to be someone you could actually want without shame. But I couldn't outrun it, and then she called, said she wanted to meet, said she had lied. None of it was true, she admitted. She wanted to destroy what she couldn't have. She wanted to ruin me. She thought you and I were dangerous together. She wasn't wrong. We are dangerous, because we make each other feel things that this world doesn't allow us to feel. But I don't want to hide anymore. I just need time. And when I come back, if you'll still have me, I want to start over. Not as your best friend, but as the man who loves you." Jimin's knees gave out. He sank to the floor, the letter clenched in his hand, tears spilling unchecked down his face. He laughed, half mad, half relieved, bitter and sweet all at once. "You idiot," he whispered to the empty room. "You absolute fucking idiot." He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he replayed everything, every moment, every accidental touch, every conversation that now read like a love song, every silence that wasn't silence at all, but words neither of them could say. The next morning, Jimin walked into the practice room and found Yoongi standing alone, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "You look like shit," Yoongi said bluntly. "I feel worse." Yoongi studied him for a moment. "You read it." Jimin didn't bother asking how he knew. "Yeah. And he's gone." Yoongi sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "He messaged me last night." Jimin's heart jumped. "What? Why didn't you?" "He asked me not to tell you. Said he needed to figure something out." "What did he say?" Jimin's voice cracked. Yoongi met his eyes, and for the first time there was softness there. "He said he's done hiding, but he's scared. Scared of how much you mean to him. Scared of losing everything if he reaches for it." Jimin closed his eyes. "We already lost everything." Yoongi stepped closer, resting a firm hand on his shoulder. Then get it back. That night, Jimin wrote him back. He didn't send a voice note, didn't send a picture, just one message typed with trembling fingers. If you think love is dangerous, good, because I'm ready to go to war for you. Scene 2:14 a.m. No reply. But Jimin waited. And for the first time in years, he didn't wait in fear. The studio door creaked open at 2:57 a.m. Jimin didn't look up at first. He was lying flat on the wooden floor, headphones over his ears, eyes closed as Yoongi's demo track bled through the silence. His body was still, but his heart had been packing for days. He knew every sound the studio made, the hum of the lights, the low groan of the old AC unit, the faint echoes of memories that clung to the walls. So when the door clicked shut, he knew. He sat up slowly, breath hitching, heart pounding. And there he was. Jungkook stood under the dull, fluorescent lights, hoodie damp from the mist outside, his eyes shadowed and unreadable. He looked older somehow, tired, but there was a fire behind his gaze that hadn't been there before. Neither of them spoke. Not yet. The silence stretched between them like a live wire, buzzing with all the things unsaid, all the pain held back like a scream in the throat. You came back, Jimin whispered first. Jungkook took a step forward. I almost didn't. Why? Jungkook's mouth twitched into something like a grim smile. Because I knew once I saw you again, I wouldn't be able to lie anymore. Jimin stood up slowly. His palms were sweaty, jaw clenched. Then don't. I'm not here to pretend anymore, Jungkook said, voice raw. I'm not here to be the golden boy, the perfect idol, the one who keeps his mouth shut and smiles for the cameras while bleeding inside. Jimin took a shaky breath. So why are you here? Jungkook looked at him like he was the only thing that existed. To tell you the truth, even if it ruins everything. The room held its breath. Jungkook crossed the space between them in 3 long steps until they were standing chest to chest, breath to breath. His hand hovered for a second, then landed on Jimin's waist, unsure but desperate. I love you, Jungkook said, not with flourish, not with poetic charm, but with the honesty of someone who had burned for too long in silence. I've loved you since we were stupid kids, trying to outsing each other in the trainee dorms. Jimin's lips parted, but Jungkook wasn't done. I loved you when you stayed up all night helping me practice. I loved you when you cried alone in stairwells because you thought no one saw. I loved you when you kissed someone else and pretended it didn't mean anything. That kiss meant nothing, Jimin said hoarsely, cutting in. I was drunk, confused, scared. I know, Jungkook's fingers tightened on his waist. I know now, but back then it felt like you were slipping through my hands and I didn't even have the right to ask why. Tears burned at the corners of Jimin's eyes. You hurt me, he whispered. You ran. I know. You let me think I was crazy, that I imagined the moments between us. I know. Jimin shoved him back suddenly, chest heaving. Then why the hell are you here now? To pick up the pieces, to see if I'm still waiting like a fool. Jungkook didn't resist. He just stood there, breathing hard, his expression shattered. No, he said. I'm here to ask if you'll let me fight for it now. Now, Jimin laughed bitterly. Now that the damage is done, now that you've already buried everything under 3 years of guilt and silence. Because I was scared, Jungkook said, stepping forward again. Because I thought love like this would destroy us, but it was the silence that did, and I'm done being afraid. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, the dark circles under his eyes, the clenched jaw, the trembling in his hand. You think you can just walk back into my life with a confession and fix everything? No, Jungkook reached out, fingertips brushing Jimin's cheek, but I want to try. The kiss wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was a clash of everything they had swallowed for years, rage, pain, longing, desperation. Lips pressed too hard, breath stolen, fingers digging into fabric and skin like they were afraid to let go. Jimin shoved him against the mirror, breaking it with the force of their bodies. Jungkook didn't care. Blood from a small cut bloomed on his hand, but he gripped Jimin tighter. You're bleeding, Jimin breathed between kisses. Let it. You're an idiot. You love me. Jimin cursed under his breath, burying his face in Jungkook's neck. You have no idea how much. They didn't sleep that night. They didn't talk about the consequences. They just stayed, on the studio floor, tangled together, hearts thudding in fragile rhythm. But when morning light crept through the windows, Jimin's phone lit up with a notification from management. A leaked photo. Him and Jungkook. The mirror crack, the kiss, the blood on Jungkook's hand. It was blurry, but unmistakable. A message from their manager followed quickly after. We need to talk, now. Jimin turned to Jungkook. They know. Jungkook took his hand, blood still drying on his knuckles. Let them. The conference room was colder than usual. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the silence that wrapped around every person sitting inside like a noose tightening around their necks. Jimin sat on the left side of the long table, lips pressed into a thin line, fingers tapping rhythmically against his knee under the table. Across from him, Jungkook sat straight-backed, eyes forward, expression unreadable, but his hands were clenched so tightly the veins stood out like scars. Their manager, Jeon, paced slowly at the head of the table, the leaked photo projected behind him in brutal, undeniable clarity. The image said everything neither of them could take back. Jimin's face was visible, lips on Jungkook's neck, eyes half-lidded. The mirror behind them was shattered, blood on Jungkook's hand, an exposed secret, raw and loud, now torn from the shadows. This, Jeon began, voice low but shaking, is career suicide. No, Jungkook replied calmly, this is truth. Truth doesn't sell in this industry, the PR director snapped from the corner. Control sells, illusion sells, safety sells. We're not products, Jimin said, finally lifting his eyes to meet hers. We're human, we bleed. And now the world sees it, she shot back. Do you know how many headlines are already speculating everything from drugs to violence to secret relationships? Your names are trending everywhere. Sponsors are panicking. Calls haven't stopped. You've put everything we've built for the last decade on the line for what? A kiss. Jungkook stood. No, he said firm. Not for a kiss, for love. The word landed like a grenade. The room flinched, some out of shock, others in disbelief. You don't get to say that, one of the board reps said coldly. Not when thousands of people rely on your image. Not when every move you make is watched by millions. Do you even understand what you've done? Jungkook laughed harsh, bitter. Yeah, I finally told the truth. That's all I did. After years of rehearsed smiles, fan service, silence, I told the truth. You're selfish, someone else muttered. You're both reckless, we have tour booked, albums coming, contracts. Then cancel them, Jimin said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Jeon looked stunned. Jimin. Cancel them, Jimin repeated. If being ourselves means we can't do this anymore, then maybe we were never free to begin with. The silence that followed was deeper than before. Jungkook reached for his hand under the table. This time, he didn't hide it. I won't lie anymore, he said. Not for them, not even for the fans. That was the moment everything began to crumble. Within an hour, their scandal was picked up globally. Articles spun every angle, some sympathetic, most cruel. Headlines screamed betrayal, shame, lust, downfall. Forums exploded with theories. Old clips were dissected like crime scenes. The fandom split like shattered glass, some defending, others turning vicious. By nightfall, hashtags trended worldwide. Protect Jimin and Jungkook. BTS scandal. Love is not a sin. Kick them out. In the dorm, the mood was heavier than any storm. Taehyung sat on the couch, silent, staring at the news feed. Hoseok paced the hallway. Namjoon stood in the kitchen, his hand frozen midair, holding a mug he never drank from. Jin had returned early from filming, expression unreadable. When Jimin and Jungkook entered, the silence pressed harder. Jimin opened his mouth, but it was Jin who spoke first. You really did it, he said softly. Jungkook nodded. Then we stand with you, Namjoon said without hesitation. Taehyung finally looked up. "You're idiots," he said, eyes glossy. "But brave idiots, I'm proud of you." Jimin's voice broke. "You don't have to." "We do," Hoseok cut in. "Because this isn't just about you two, it's about all of us. Our right to be human." Jungkook sat down, burying his face in his hands. For the first time since the photo leaked, he let himself shake. "I'm so tired," he whispered. "Of hiding, of apologizing for feelings I never asked for." Jimin sat beside him, pulling him close. "We face it together now, no matter what." That night they didn't sleep. None of them did. The dorm became a war room discussing statements, strategy, damage control. PR advisors came and went. Lawyers called. Phones buzzed endlessly. But none of that compared to what happened the next morning. A video. Leaked. Not just a kiss, but a recording from the security cam inside the studio, taken weeks earlier. Footage of Jungkook collapsing in Jimin's arms, of whispered words, of vulnerability that had no business being public. The backlash hit like a tidal wave. Manipulative. Calculated. They're faking trauma for sympathy. They're mentally unstable. The industry vultures smelled blood. Sponsors pulled deals. A music show canceled their slot. An anonymous producer leaked that they'd always suspected something was wrong with those two. Jimin wanted to scream. Instead, he wrote a letter. He posted it to Weverse at midnight. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for understanding. I'm asking for one thing only, the right to exist honestly. If that means I lose everything I've built, so be it. I'd rather fall as myself than rise as someone I'm not." The comments were a storm. But buried in thousands of reactions, one stuck out. A fan posted a photo of herself, holding her girlfriend's hand. Captioned, "Because of you, I believe I can be brave too." Jungkook read it in silence. Then he turned to Jimin, voice hoarse. "Even if we lose it all, we've already won." Jimin didn't answer. He just pulled Jungkook into his arms and held him until dawn. The first death threat came 2 days later. A plain envelope slipped under the dorm door sometime during the night. No return address. No handwriting on the front. Just the weight of dread, paper-thin and deadly. Inside was a photo of Jimin and Jungkook walking out of the studio, hands brushing. Slapped across it in red ink, smeared like blood. "You won't survive this." Jin found it first. He didn't say a word. Just walked into the living room where the others were trying to eat in silence, dropped the envelope onto the table like it was soaked in gasoline, and waited. Jungkook paled. Jimin read it once, then twice, slower the second time, jaw locked. Taehyung was the first to break the silence. "Is this what it's going to be now, every day?" Hoseok stood, slamming his chopsticks down. "We're getting security." "We already have security," Namjoon said quietly. "This is different." "This is terrorism," Jimin said flatly. "No," Jungkook's voice was sharp. "This is fear, fear of what we represent." "What do we represent now?" Jin asked. "Two lovers, two fools, or a revolution that no one asked for?" Jungkook looked at him, something burning behind his eyes. "All of it." Management tried to contain the fire, but it was far too late. The headlines wouldn't stop. Conservative groups rallied against them. An entertainment news anchor openly mocked their relationship on live TV. Sponsors began demanding clauses in future contracts about public decency. International fans flooded them with messages of support, while domestic reporters whispered about cultural betrayal. But the worst hit came from within. An emergency board meeting. Jungkook and Jimin were summoned to the corporate tower, flanked by security and silent managers. The elevator ride was suffocating, filled with the buzz of phones and the stench of sanitized fear. When the doors opened, they walked into a room that felt more like a courtroom than a meeting. 7 men, one long table. The chairman looked over his glasses, calm and cold. "This isn't a trial," he began, "but the consequences may feel like one." Jimin straightened his back. "Then say what you came to say." "You've jeopardized the company's image. brand relations, and the public's trust. "We told the truth," Jungkook replied. "You broke the illusion," one board member snapped. "You betrayed the fantasy that built your careers." Another chimed in. "We have two options. We spin this and fabricate a falling out story. Jimin moves abroad for a solo project. Jungkook issues a statement about regret and confusion, and over time the image stabilizes. Or we cut you," the chairman finished. "Terminate your contracts quietly, cleanly." Jimin laughed, not a humorous laugh, a dead, bitter sound that cracked the air. "You want me to vanish to protect your image?" "You've done worse," someone muttered under their breath. Jimin turned slowly toward the speaker. "What did you just say?" "Everyone in this room knows your history. Your breakdown in 2019, your silence during the mental health scandal, your disappearing act last year. You've always been unstable." Jungkook stood so fast his chair toppled backward. "Say that again," he growled. "Control your emotions," the chairman warned. "Don't talk about him like he's broken," Jungkook snapped. "You have no idea what he's carried for this group, for this company. He's a liability." "No," Jimin said coldly. "I'm a mirror. You don't like what you see in me because I reflect all the truths you keep buried under image contracts and polished interviews." A beat of silence. Then the chairman sighed. "Final decision. You will both take an indefinite hiatus effective immediately. You will not post. You will not engage with fans. You will not travel. And if you breach this, we will sue." "And the others?" Jimin asked. "They will continue, as professionals." Jungkook turned to Jimin. "Let's walk." But Jimin didn't move. "You think silence is going to kill us," he said. "You think exile will erase what we are, what we've already done. We planted something the day we told the truth, something you can't control." "That's enough," the chairman said. "You're right," Jimin muttered. "It is enough." They left without shaking hands. Back in the dorm, the atmosphere had shifted. Not broken, not angry, just changed. The others sat quietly as Jimin and Jungkook packed duffel bags under the dim light of the living room. Taehyung watched them with glassy eyes. Hoseok had his head down, fists clenched. Jin stood leaning against the wall, unreadable. Namjoon finally stepped forward. "You know," he said quietly, "there was a time I thought being an idol meant sacrificing everything. Now I think, maybe it just means surviving while telling the truth." Jimin looked at him. "Are you mad?" Namjoon shook his head. "No, I'm scared, but not mad." Taehyung suddenly threw himself at Jungkook in a fierce hug. "Don't die," he whispered. "That's all I ask." Jungkook hugged him back tightly. "Not planning to." Jimin turned to Jin. "You haven't said anything." Jin looked at him, then walked over, pulling Jimin into a quiet embrace. "You did what I never could," he whispered. "You made this real." The door closed behind them at 3:12 a.m. No cameras, no managers, no schedule. Just two souls, stripped of everything but each other. They got into Jungkook's car. The city lights blurred past them like falling stars. "Where are we going?" Jimin asked. Jungkook didn't answer. Instead, he reached across the center console and laced their fingers together. "Anywhere we want," he said. And for the first time in a long, long time, they both smiled. They disappeared for 68 days. No posts, no sightings, no leaks. Some said they'd gone abroad. Others claimed they were hiding in the mountains, meditating in temples or living under fake names in quiet coastal towns. Fans speculated, mourned, and fought wars online in their absence. The world moved on, but not without feeling the void they left behind. Two voices silenced mid-song, a flame snuffed out before it burned to completion. Until the letter. Jimin posted it, midnight sharp, on their old fan community page. No photos, no styling, no makeup, just words. To the ones who waited. To the ones who hated. To the ones who didn't know what to feel. We're not here to win anything back. We're here to finish what we started. We're here to stand in our truth, not for forgiveness, not for permission, for freedom. This will be our last performance, not because we've lost, but because we've finally found the ending we never thought we deserved. The next day, a single concert date was announced. One night, one stage, no press, no cameras, just them. It sold out in 47 seconds. The venue was a reclaimed theater, once condemned, now reborn. It smelled of sawdust and sweat and rust. The curtains were stitched with gold thread but frayed at the edges. The stage lights flickered when turned on, but none of it mattered. Because this time, it wasn't about perfection. It was about truth. The moment they stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted, not with screams, but with silence. A reverent, trembling silence, as if everyone there understood that something sacred was unfolding. Jimin walked to the center, heart pounding like a drum of war and love and finality. Jungkook followed, close behind. They stood side by side, eyes sweeping the crowd. No dancers, no pyrotechnics, no earpieces, just a mic stand, a piano, and them. The music started. Not one of their hits, but a song they'd written in secret during the exile. It began with a single note, low, aching, the sound of longing wrapped in hope. Jimin's voice came next, soft, almost breaking, but full of conviction. They told us we were shadows, so we learned how to dance in the dark. Then Jungkook joined him, harmony cracking from the sheer force of emotion. They said love was dangerous, but what is life without the fire? The song swelled, not grandiose but honest. It didn't ask for applause, it deserved silence. At one point, Jimin's voice faltered, just for a beat. His throat closed, eyes glassy. Jungkook stepped closer, placed a hand on his back, grounded him. They finished the song together, leaning into the last note like it was a confession, a prayer, a kiss. When the final chord faded, the silence held. Then the crowd rose. Not in frenzy, but in quiet awe. Some cried, some simply stood. One by one, a sea of people holding their breath in collective understanding. And then, a single voice shouted, "Thank you for being honest." The dam broke. Cheers, sobs, claps, laughter, the sound of release, of rebellion, of love unbound. Jungkook pulled Jimin into his arms right there on stage. Not performative, not staged, just real. The kind of hug that says, we made it, we're still here. After the show, there were no encores, no press conference. Just a sunrise. They watched it from the rooftop of the theater, legs dangling over the edge, fingers intertwined. "You think they'll be okay?" Jimin asked, voice hushed. "They'll be angry," Jungkook replied. "Then they'll remember, then maybe they'll understand." Jimin looked sideways at him. "And us?" Jungkook smiled, tired but free. "We never needed their permission." The sun broke over the horizon, painting gold over scars, over shadows, over everything they thought they'd lost. And in that light, they didn't look like fallen idols. They looked like men. Real. Flawed. Whole. Together. Not for the cameras. Not for the crowd. But for each other. And as the world turned, no longer waiting for them, Jungkook turned to Jimin, rested his forehead against his, and whispered the same words that had once shattered them, now remade. "I love you," out loud, forever.